Amen this morning? Rest well, sleep well? Okay. Maybe not. But you take your Bibles and turn with me to Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. Hope you've got something to write with. I think I'm going to give you that. You have something to write with. I'd like you to write these things down here in just a few minutes. Things that have helped me every day living a Christian life. Ephesians chapter 6, starting down around verse 10, he starts talking about the warfare of the believer. And of course, we understand we're in a warfare. Turn my mic on, okay, I'm sorry. Good? Mom? Yeah, we got
Thank you.
power. But he starts talking in verse 10 about the warfare of the believer. And there is a spiritual, it wasn't just in Paul's time, we face a spiritual warfare today. It's going on all around us. And the truth of it is many times this spiritual warfare can become even physical in people's lives, and as we face the evils and things that Satan wants to do to us and to use others to do to us. And so it's a real battle. I mean, whether we can always see what's behind it or not, the battle's still there. And so he talks about this warfare, and then verse 11, he starts talking about to put on the whole armor of God. He talks about all the pieces of the armor, what each one of them represent, and how we should put on all these things. But then in verse 18, after all this, he tells us the warrior's resource. He talked about the warfare, he talked about the armor, but now he talks about the resource. And I think this is what holds everything in that armor. It holds it all together. This is what gives us the strength and the power we need to win this spiritual warfare and to live like we should live in this life, the Lord Jesus Christ. And in verse 18, this is what he says: praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. And for me, that utterance might be given unto me, that I may open my mouth boldly, to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in bonds, that therein I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. So Paul is saying, he said, we have this armor, and we put on this armor, and it's a great armor. And you can read that again later today. But he said, but then praying is what holds it all together. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think we have ever really fully tapped the power of prayer.
That's right.
I think we get so shallow, we never get very deep in our prayer life. And so one of the things I've been trying to work on in the last 10, 15 years specifically, is to improve my prayer life. To pray, not because I have to pray. Not to just set a time that at this time I'm going to, but to be in an attitude of prayer. And that's when you talk about pray without ceasing, there's none of us that can pray and be talking to the Lord and we'd never be able to do anything else if we hadn't say words. But he's talking about being in an attitude of prayer, being in a place where at any moment, in any circumstance, anything, that you'd be in a place in your life that you could pray and talk to the Lord from your heart or from your mouth. By the way, He hears what we say. The God that created this mouth, He hears what we say. God created our mind, He hears what we think.
Right.
And guess what else? You don't even have to say something to pray. The God who created my human heart and my soul hears it when my soul cries, when my mind doesn't understand it, when my mouth can't explain it. He hears the cry that comes from my soul. Because He created me and He knows me and He knows what I need. And so prayer is such an important one writer said that prayer is like a guided missile that you can direct to any destination on the face of the earth, and it'll hit its target every time. He said, now sometimes it has a delayed detonation, but it always hits its target every single time. And so I just think we need to start focusing more on prayer. We talk about revivals and the great revivals throughout history. All the revivals that I've studied throughout history, they all began because a handful of people, that became large numbers of people, decided to really start praying. Decided that prayer was what was needed. And they prayed those revivals down. We didn't preach them up. We didn't sing them up. They prayed those revivals down. And that's why souls were saved and lives were changed. Because Christians got different. Christians got things right with God. And then the world starts seeing them living like they ought to live. And then we see people saved. And so prayer is so important. So I'm going to give you 7 things 7 things that I pray every day. I started this about 15 years ago, where I just sat down and wrote these things out and said, Lord, every day, I don't always do it all at the same time, but sometime through the day, I make sure I pray about each of these 7 things in my life, because it helps me in the spiritual warfare. Now, you understand, traveling like I do, listen, I don't travel. I'm not away from my wife a lot because I don't like being with her. Matter of fact, I miss her terribly. You know, she's crazy about me. She can't hardly stand it when I'm gone. And I'm about the same way. See, I've known her since I was 9 and she was 8. I knew her 10 years before we ever got married. We've been married be 41 years in July, and I've known her 51 years. So there's something to be said for knowing who you're married to that long. I didn't just know her, I knew her whole family. She knew my whole family, and she married me anyway. You know, we know each other. And let me tell you something, she trusts me. I couldn't do what I do if she didn't trust me. Now, let me tell you why she trusts me. Because I've never given her any reason not to. And I don't intend to start now. Because I told you before, my wife's got a little redneck in her. And it'd be dangerous for me to do anything, to be honest with you. That girl, the redneck might come out. But I love her too much. But please understand, that doesn't mean we're never tempted. When you've been away from your husband and wife, and you're away from them, you may be 1,000 miles away in a motel room by yourself, you're thinking, well, nobody else is going to see, nobody else is going to know. The temptations are there. So I just figured out when I started this traveling, and that I just need to be sure that I did some things every day to help me when those temptations come. And I've already asked God to help me with those things, and to resist those kind of things. Because with everything that's in me, I want to be faithful to that girl. Because she's been faithful to me. But more than that, I want to be faithful to my Lord. Because those kind of things doesn't just hurt us, it hurts our Lord. When we allow ourselves to give in to those kind of things and temptations. And by the way, that will come. That will come. I had a preacher tell me one time, he said, I'm at the place in my life, I am so spiritual in my life right now that if a beautiful woman with absolutely no clothes on whatsoever walked right in front of me, it wouldn't bother me a bit. I said, that makes me think a couple of things about you. First of all, you're a liar. Second of all, you must be dead and just don't know it yet. Because I don't care how old you get, I'm just telling you, and Satan knows that. He knows us. He knows how to get to us. And that may not be your weakness. Whatever our weakness is, he knows what that weakness is. And that's where he will attack. That's where he will come at us. And we've got to be ready. We've got to not only have that armor on, but we need to be praying without ceasing. Being in an attitude of prayer so that when those times come, we've already that day prayed and said, God, help me today to live right. 7 things I pray about every day. Number 1, godliness. Godliness. Every day, sometime through the day, sometimes several times through the day, I pray, Lord, help me to become more like you today. Because you see, the more I become like Christ, the more godly I'll be. Amen. See, that's the goal anyway. You see, when we got saved, we're not completely, we were sanctified, but we're not completely sanctified. We are being sanctified as we live for Him. And listen, every day we'll be living better for Him, or live closer to Him. It ought to be easier to resist those temptations now than it was 20 years ago in our Christian walk. It should be easier to live for Him now than it was. And so every day, Lord, help me to be more like you. And see, God's holy. And I want to be like Him. I want to be as close as I can to the holiness of God. I will not attain that in this life. And one day we stand before Him, we'll be glorified, and we'll be perfectly whole and complete in all those ways. But we're not there yet. We're being made holy. We're getting, we should be getting better. Amen. And the thing is, most of us could probably do better than what we are most days. So God, help me today to become more like you, to become more like your Son, Jesus Christ. To love others like He loves me. To be gracious to others like you've been to me, Lord. To be encouraging to others like you've encouraged me. You see, if you're praying to be more like Him, I promise you, if you're praying that and you mean it, God will help you to become more holy every day of your Christian walk with Him. And you know what? The more you get close to Him, the easier it's going to be to resist those temptations when they come. Because when you know you're real close to Him, by the way, He sees what we do no matter how close we are to Him.
Right.
He didn't have to be beside us to see it. Like our husbands, our wives, our children, our friends. But when you're walking close to Him, it makes you want to live right. It makes you want to look right. It makes you want to act right. It makes you want to think right. It makes you want to talk right. It makes you want to be godly. So I pray every day, God help me today to become more and more and more and more and more like you. Because the more I become like Him, the more God will be able to use me. The more influence I'll have in the lives of others around me, the more I get close to Him. That's the first thing. Second thing has to do with generosity. First one, godliness. Help me today be more like you, Lord. Generosity. I always pray, help me today to see the opportunities you give me to do something in someone's life, either to give them of my time, or my treasures, my possessions, whatever I can give, to help me, first of all, to see those opportunities. We pass by many of those kind of opportunities and don't even see them. Sometimes we see them and we don't respond to them. But I pray, Lord, every day, help me to see some man, some woman, some young, help me to put somebody in my life, and when I cross them, help me to see what I need to do to help them today. And it may just be a few kind words. Just to say, hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for you, love you, care about you, or just to shake your hand and be friendly. A lot of churches, that help a lot of churches, that just shake people's hands and be friendly. Because you do understand we have some churches that are not. Now, they're friendly with each other, but they're not friendly to new people who come in. I mean, a lot of places, if I said you're not friendly, they'd be appalled. But they're friendly to each other. Not friendly to others who come in. They don't know, and you got to be friendly to them. If you want people to come back, you got to be friendly to them when they come the first time. But this thing of generosity, don't pray this if you don't mean it. Because I'm telling you, trust me, God will put something on your heart to give that you'd rather keep. Trust me. Time and again. And I think He just does that to see if I really mean it. And I think He does that to see that, David, I'll see if you really meant what you, because He knows what I mean. But I think He tests me sometimes with things. And there was a young man in a little place called Nauvoo, Alabama. A real place, I promise. Nauvoo, Alabama. Biggest thing there for years was the Sleep Lizard restaurant. Curtis, you've been there, hadn't you? Been to Nauvoo, tell the truth, right? And the young boy, when I first started going there, Mickey Crane was the pastor. There's a little boy named Tyler that was in that church, and listen, when he was just a little boy, they'd put him up on stage, stand him in a chair, and they'd hand him a mandolin, and man, he'd just play. They'd hand him a guitar, they'd hand him a violin, they'd hand him a bass guitar, they'd hand him a banjo. One time I was there in Bible, and every service he played a different instrument. And so the last night I said, when he'd already finished, I said, listen, Tyler, I'm about to place, if you come out there with one more different instrument, I'm going home. He gets up and walks in the back, comes out with a dobro. Now, if you know what a dobro is, it looks like a guitar, but it turns up this way, and you have a slide here, and finger pick here, and started playing a dobro. The kid, I don't think he even to this day realizes how talented he is. But he needed, and as he got older, his teenage years, his talents were just growing and expanding in an amazing way. He had a mandolin. It wasn't much of a mandolin. It was okay. It wasn't a professional grade. It didn't come up to the level of his ability by any means. And so I'm in my music room at my house one day. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to be going down to preach revival in his church again. By this time, he's probably 16, 17 years old. And so God puts on my heart to give him a nice mandolin. Now, I had several mandolins at that time. And I had one in particular. Actually, I had two in particular. And God put on my heart, I want you to take that 1918 Gibson F4 mandolin that's in mint condition, that sounds good. Worth a lot of money. So I want you to take that one with you. Then I want you to take that 1963 Gibson F5 mandolin you have, that's in mint condition, that sounds good, that's worth a lot of money. I want you to take both of them down there, let him play both of them, and then say to him, if money were no object, you could buy either one of these. Which one would you buy? Whichever one he says, I want you to give it to him. Now, I asked the Lord about that several more times that day. I mean, I want to be sure I got it right. I mean, don't you know? Because I liked them both. And did I say they're worth a good bit of money? But God, I knew what God wanted me to do, so I said, Lord, I know you. Lord, you know I'll do that. Listen, Kathy and I, we figured out everything we have God gave us. It's His right to tell us what to do with it. Amen. His right. So I said, I'll have to do it, Lord. So I go, and I get down there. We go over to his grandmother's house one night, and they're all making music there. He's playing his mandolin, and I brought those out. I said, I want you to do something. I want you to play both these mandolins and tell me what you think about them, okay? Well, yeah, and boy, he opens up that 1963 when his eyes got big as silver dollars. He picks it, he starts playing that thing, just tearing it up. Goodness, made me sick. And just a kid, and he said, oh, Brother David, that's nice. I said, well, try that other one. He pulled out that 1918 F4 mandolin. And he said, oh my goodness. He says, that looks like under the new mandolin. I said, yeah, I know. He said, he started. So I said, when he played them up, I said, all right, which one of these, if money were no object, and you could have any one of these, which one would you buy? And I knew which one he'd pick. He wanted the newer one, the F5 one, which was more of a bluegrass kind of instrument, which was like what he played. And so he said, I have none. He was, no, I want this one. I said, okay, it's yours. He said, what? I said, it's yours. He said, you mean you're giving it to me? I said, it's yours. He said, this is a nice mandolin. I said, yeah, I know. He said, this is worth a lot of money. I said, yeah, I know. He said, you don't want it? I said, well, sure I want it, but it wouldn't mean much for me to give you something I didn't want. Amen. See, that's how we tend to be generous. Most of the time, we give people things we don't want anymore, or we've already about worn it out, or we've got another one just exactly like it, and we'll never miss it. That doesn't mean much. Well, let me just testify here for a minute. Within 2 weeks of that revival, I had 2 different friends. One of them texted me, and he said, I just acquired a nice Gibson mandolin that's worth about $5,000. And he told me what it was. And he says, and I don't play the mandolin, but I know you play it. I know you give them away, you those. He said, so I put it in the mail to you today and giving it to you. I said, wow, that's pretty good. Thank you so much. Well, the second friend, within 2 weeks of that revival, calls me. He says, I just acquired a really nice Gibson. I mean, I must have been having a sale on those things or something. A nice Gibson. And he said, it's worth about $6,000. And he said, I don't play, but I know you give those. He says, so I put it in the mail to you today and giving it to you. I went home and I was telling Kathy about it. Now, Kathy and I, my music room is on one end of the house. Our bedroom is on the other end of the house there. And she likes it that way because she sleeps better that way. And I put a music stand by a chair in our bedroom so that I could keep a guitar or a mandolin right there. So if I wanted to sit in the chair and play before I went to bed. And she said, would you get that out? She said, you got a whole music room. I don't want that sitting in my bedroom, but, you know. And so she you got some in, won't you get rid of some? And so it's always this thing about, and so I told her, Kathy, listen, I told her what happened. I said, I promise you, I'm doing the best. But I can't give them away as fast as God's giving them to me. It's not my fault. I'm just saying to you, God may not always do that, but sometimes He does. Yeah. But if you give it for that reason, He probably won't. I'm just talking about, God help me today to touch somebody's life in a positive and encouraging way. That might make the difference in whether they keep serving you or not. Yeah. Now, you do understand, anytime I give young people instruments, I tell them then, if I ever hear you play this in bars and joints, I'm going to come and personally repossess it myself.
That's right. Good.
Use it in church. Use it for church things. Use it for spiritual things. And I know that once God put on my heart to do that, I feel sure that's what they're going to do. But I'm talking about being generous. And as I shared with you in one message, you don't have to be rich to be generous. You know, God's been better to all of us than any of us deserve.
Right.
He's given me, Kathy, more than we could ever need, more than we ever asked Him for. I just think a Christian, that ought to be part of a Christian's nature.
Mm-hmm.
They're generous.
Yeah.
To give of their time, of their things, to someone else who may not have those things, may not be able to get them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Or may just need some time with somebody just to sit and listen and care. I talked about my wife and how she's given all those days and weeks of time that with me that are hers. Curry's wife, Karen's done the same thing with his children over the years. She's given it to you and to others where we go. They don't have to do that. But they do it freely. And they do it willingly. I'm going to tell you, we couldn't travel and go the places we go if we didn't have that kind of lives. Right. Be no way. If I had to come home and fuss and everything. You know, I used to tell people, I said, I'm not home long enough to, you know, it takes a while to work up to a good fight, you know. And I'm not home long enough to work up to a good fuss, you know. I told them when I first started doing this, for the first 6 months, my lips stayed chapped the first 6 months because I was all the time kissing Kathy goodbye and kissing her hello. And you just in and out. But it takes a generous woman to be willing to give that much time to others. So I'm talking about whatever God puts on your heart to give, respond to that. Just do that. Don't worry about how much it costs. Don't worry about whether you'll have another one or not, whether you're going to miss it or not. God can take care of all those things. All those things. He knows how to take care of those things. And I can give you story after story after story after story after story where I've given things and then what God did for me and Kathy. And He is so faithful to us. But I just come to the conclusion now that I feel like with God, I'm just kind of the middleman. I just get to keep them for a little while, enjoy them while I have them, and then I pass them on to who God wanted to have them start with. So sometimes He just wants you to be the middleman, the middle person. And He's going to bless you with it so you can bless somebody else with it. And see, if all that went on, I think church would be a lot happier place. We'd be a lot more contented people. You know why most people aren't contented? They don't have everything they want to have.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about possession. If you're not very careful, instead of you possessing them, they're going to possess you. It's when you learn to take your hands off and let go of those kind of things and say, Lord, I'm whatever you want me to do with it, I'll do whatever you impress me to do with it. Lord, it belongs to you. When we can come to the place we can let go of things, our life will be a lot more enjoyable. And a lot more rewarding and a lot more of a blessing to others. But see, the human nature is to hold on to what we have. I worked hard for that. I wanted that for years. I deserve that. I'm not giving that away. Wow. Well, Lord, help me today to put somebody in my path that I can be generous to, either to give them my time, my things, whatever it might be. Today, Lord, don't let me miss an opportunity today. That's the second thing. Third thing, graciousness. Godliness, generosity, graciousness. Every day I pray, Lord, help me to be gracious today to those who are gracious to me and to those who are not gracious to me. To those that love me and to those that don't love me. Easy to be gracious to people who love you and people who are gracious to you. A lot more difficult to be gracious. Can I just tell you what most churches need as a revival of graciousness? I never used to be amazed at how we treat each other sometimes in church. And so, in such, we're so ungracious or ingracious. We're hateful and we're contrary, and when something's wrong with us, we tend to take it out on the people around us, and we're not gracious to one another. And it's so sad when Christians can be so hard and harsh to each other. That's not the way it's intended to be. It's not supposed to be that way in the body of Christ. Now, we don't always agree on everything, but you know what? That does not relieve me of the responsibility to be gracious to them. Be gracious and kind. Sometimes it'll help you a lot. For instance, I had a flight scheduled and it came on the speaker and said, this flight has been canceled and we're going to have to rebook you on a later flight. And of course, I've been flying now. I tell people I'm real close to becoming a chaplain. Delta Airlines, I'm flying so much. I tell them it's kind of bad. You know you're traveling too much when one of the Delta employees in Nashville retires and you get invited to the... You're traveling way too much. But the flight was canceled, and of course it's going to cause me and a lot of other people to miss their connecting flights. And you miss the first one, it's going to mess up the rest of your day. And I learned a long time ago, there's no need to get mad about that, no need, because there's not one thing you get mad is just going to make it. So I've stood in line many times and listened to people ahead of me in line cussing and screaming and chewing out the poor folks there behind the counter. And listen, it's not their fault. They hate it as bad as we do. Worse, maybe. And they're getting treated. They're getting treated terribly. Let me tell you what I found out. When it gets my time there, I say, I'm sorry you get treated like this. And bless your heart, I know you have a hard job and you don't like to see better than we do. And I said, listen, I'm so sorry for the way people have been treating you. I said, whatever you do to help me, that'd be great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the job you do. You're doing a wonderful job that you're not screaming back and cussing back at all these people cussing you. And so I just want to tell you what a good job you're doing. Can I just tell you, many times they'll get me on another flight and I look and they bump me to first class. Just for being nice. Just for being gracious to them when everybody else wasn't being. Sometimes when you're gracious to those people that are gracious to you, you keep on doing that and they might change. God might change them when they see you responding that way. And I say this all the time. I can't control what anybody else does or says. I can control what I do and say. And that's who I'm responsible for. I'm talking about being nice and kind to people, being gracious. You'll win a lot more people to Christ being gracious to them than you ever will being hateful to them, screaming at them and cussing at them. We're not going to win a lot of people that way. So graciousness. So just be nice to each other. Even when you don't feel like it. And some days I don't feel like being nice. Some days I've enjoyed about all the fellowship I can take. I meet thousands of people. And I'm not complaining. I love that. That's one of the parts about my job that I love the most. If all I had to do was sit behind a desk 5 days a week and naturally shoot me now. I like being out here with you. I like being in our churches with our pastors and our people. That's my heart. That's what my heart is. And, but some days it's not easy to be nice. When you've been going hard and you don't give enough time between trips to recover and you're physically weary. And some days the redneck tries to climb out. But my job is to keep him down. Keep him from coming out. Cause me to say things I don't need to say. Now my wife and I, we have a little different temperament. If we ever have had, about the only things we've ever had fusses about was probably over money, maybe when we first got married, because, I would give away the house almost, and her daddy taught her to be tighter than a bark on a tree when it came to money. So, we had some discussion. And when she gets upset, she wants to talk about it. Let's talk. I don't want to talk about it. When I'm upset, I don't talk about it. I don't talk to anybody. And she says I'm pouting, but that's not what it is. I just don't want to, and when I'm upset, I don't want to say a bunch of things that I wouldn't have said if I wasn't upset. That I'm going to have to go back for later and apologize for. And I tell her, I still think she thinks I'm pouting, and maybe I am some, I don't know, but I do believe that we got to be careful. What you say, even though people forgive you for it, they'll never forget it. that you said it.
Yeah.
See, God can forget, we can't. And so I'm talking about being gracious to your husband, your wife, to your children, to your parents. It involves every aspect of our life. This being nice to the people you do business with and you deal with. I'm just telling you, you'll have a much better testimony in your church, in your neighborhood, in the Walmart, the grocery stores where you shop. If you're just always nice and kind and gracious. Now, I'm not telling you I feel that well. I'm telling you sometimes it's good I'm in a room by myself. That there's nobody there for me to take it out on. And I just have to talk to the Lord about it. And He has this way of always making it my fault. Anybody know what I'm talking about? So graciousness. I pray every day, God, help me to be godly. Become more like you. Every day, help me to be generous. To meet somebody that day, I can do something in there, give them time, give them whatever you impress me to give them, Lord, to help them along the way. Then graciousness. Then the fourth thing, genuineness. Genuineness. I pray, Lord, help me to live today with no pretense or hypocrisy and be the person you created me to be. One of the hardest things we have to learn as preachers and as Christians is it's okay to be who God created you to be.
Amen.
You don't have to be me, and I don't have to be you. Matter of fact, we can't do that anyway. Because I have a different personality than you have. You have different characteristics in your life than I have. You were raised differently than I was raised. We have different gifts and abilities and talents. God didn't create us to be somebody else. He created us to be the person He created us to be. And so we don't have to go around in our life with all this pretense and this hypocrisy and this wall and never a facade and never let other people really see who we are. If you're living for the Lord Jesus Christ, doing the best you know how, I'm going to tell you something. Let people see the real you. The world is dying to see some genuine Christians. Some people that don't think they've been put up on a pedestal above the world. They don't think they're better than everybody else because they are Christians. Because you see, all of us were dead in trespasses and sins. All of us deserve to go to hell. But God made a way. And every one of us were sinners. Every one of us. I'm just talking about being who you are. Genuine and real. Sometimes I have people ask me, they say, now we see you out here, we see the way you preach, and do you act like that when you're in that denominational office? I said, what you see here is what you're going to see when I'm there. What you see there is what you're going to see here. I just figured out a long time ago, it's a lot better life. It's a lot more enjoyable Christian life when you don't have to always be pretending you're something you're not. Just be who you are. My mother taught me that lesson. Probably as much as what time I need to be finished. When I get up? I'm okay right now? I give you, I like stories. My mother, I already told you, she taught me this. You don't have to be rich to be generous. The other great lesson I learned from her is it's okay to be who you are. Now, I told you my mother was raised in a way out in the country. She had some redneck in her. Listen, when she was a teenager, she could work on her own car. She could change her own oil. She could bleed her own brakes. Now I say that down, and most people like 40 down, they just Dwayne look, bleed the brakes. But she could do all those things, and so that's why she grew up, and her family was very poor. My grandparents were pretty much sharecroppers, never owned any property of their own. They just lived on other people's property and farmed, and they gave a share of that to the owners, and they got to keep some to live on and to sell, and so they didn't have much. And my mother had to quit school, and when she was 15 years old, and go to work in garment factories. And so she lived a hard life, but she worked her way up in the garment factories, so she was manager of the factory. And this factory, the man who oversaw, there was 3 of them, and they had one man who would oversee them all. My mom managed one of those. There were 2 men who operated the factories, and it was 2 Jewish businessmen in New York City. And so the man who oversaw the plants for them came to my mother one day, and I was probably 16 years old, and he came to my mom and said, listen, and called their names, the Jewish businessmen, they're coming down here, and they want to see, they're going to tour the plant, they're going to see how things are going. And he said, my mom said, I would, instead of trying to find a restaurant, said, I'd like for you to have them in your home and feed them a meal while they're here. Now, okay, now think about this. Northwest Alabama, redneck capital of the world. Two businessmen, extremely rich Jewish businessmen from New York City, coming to eat at our house. That is a formula for catastrophe. So I started talking to my mom. I said, Mom, what are you going to fix? She said, I'm going to fix what I always fix. I said, no, please. It wasn't good, please. My mom, she fixed cornbread. I mean real cornbread, not that stuff people give you that tastes like cake. In a skillet, black skillet kind of cornbread, and pinto beans, and corn, and green beans, and butter beans, and tomatoes, and that's what and I loved it. But she said, I said, what are you going to fix? She said, I'm going to fix what we have. I said, Mom, please don't do that. I said, they'll be offended. And she did understand not to fix them any pork, She knew that much. But I said, Mom, please, listen, I'll give you, I'll pay for, let me go get some steaks. I'll pay for them myself, and we'll fix those minced steak, and we'll get some baked potatoes. And my mom says, we are not, they can't eat what we eat. That's just too bad. That was my mother. She wasn't going to beat anybody. She wasn't. I'm thinking, this is going to be bad. By the time comes, they come and we're sitting around the table. My mom starts putting the food on. I'm watching those guys and they're just kind of looking, seeing. I'm thinking, oh Lord, it's going to be bad. My mom's going to get fired. She won't have a job. It's going to be bad. Those guys started eating. Oh my word, I had never seen two men eat that much. Except when I was with Curtis Lynn and David Mann. Oh, they ate, and they couldn't get over that cornbread. They said, how do you make that? So she tried to tell them how she made cornbread. They were eating those things out of the garden, and fresh, and they just kept eating. And listen, before they left, they were hugging our necks and telling us what a wonderful time they'd had, and the best meal they'd had, and years and years and years and years. And my mom, they wanted my mom to give them right down the recipe to how to make that cornbread. Well, Mom said, well, the recipe by itself will help you. Here's the skillet. You got to have the right kind of skillet. So gave them her skillet. Her cornbread making skillet gave it to them. To a couple of rich Jewish businessmen from New York City. You see, I thought my mom we needed to be something we weren't to impress them.
Yeah.
She taught me that day, it's okay to be who you are.
Amen.
Don't you ever let anybody intimidate you. Think you don't have to be who you are. All I have to be is to be the best person God created us to be. I got to be the best David Crow God's created me to be. That's my task. Your task to be the best you God created you to be. Live your life in a genuine way. People will respect you more, and you'll have a lot more influence with people when they see and know that you're real and you're genuine. That there's not a facade, there's no hypocrisy, there's no pretense. Genuineness. Let me give you quickly these others, and then I'll wrap it up. Number 5, gratitude. Lord, I want to be sure to thank you today for what you've already done for me. Whatever comes my way today, whatever blessings there may be, please help me to remember to say thank you and to be grateful. I think sometimes the reason God doesn't do any more for us is we haven't thanked Him yet for what He's already done.
Yeah.
We have 3 grandsons. Our daughter Nicole, her husband Shiloh. He pastored through Baptist Church in Tennessee there, about 45 minutes from us. And they got 3 boys, 10, 7, and 5. All 3 red-headed. All 3 got different colored eyes. One of them's got brown eyes, one of them's got green eyes, one of them's got blue eyes. And all boys. Our son and his wife don't have any children yet. But I heard guys like Curtis and others talk about, how great it was when you had a grandchild, and I said, well, I'm sure it's fine, but it can't be nearly as good as they let on. It wasn't. It's better. It's better. I mean, come on. I like to do things for those boys. I like to do things. I like to take them, do things with them. I buy things that I know they enjoy, like a dune buggy and a jet ski and an amphibious vehicle. We just drive right onto the lake. And they tell me, they say, "Oh, my papa's got. We like my papa's toys. Papa's got good toys." And I want to do things for them. And at first I started that because Johnson had asked me, "Stop right there. No matter what you say, I want to do something, I'm going to do it." Now, if that's the problem, we'll go somewhere back in the back room and talk about it here, but not in front of these boys. And first, I just like to do things for them. But when I've done something nice for them, bought them something, taken them somewhere, fishing or something else, they'll come over and they'll sit on my lap. And they'll look up at me, those big old eyes, and they'll say, "Papa, I love you. Thank you so much." You know what makes me want to do? Go out and do some more. Get them something else and take them somewhere else. Because they're so grateful for what I've already done. Maybe our Heavenly Father's like that somewhat. Maybe He's waiting for us to come to Him and sit on His lap and look up in His face and say, "Oh Lord, I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you for what you've done for me." That may be what He's waiting on from you before He does anything else for you. For you to be grateful for what He's already done. We live in a society of people that there's very little gratitude for anything. They're not thankful that they've got jobs and making them income and able to pay the bills. They're not thankful about the family God's given them. Not thankful about the church God's given them to worship in. And it's an epidemic kind of thing. People just take everything for granted. They think they deserve everything. We deserve nothing. God gives us everything and we deserve nothing. I don't deserve a living. I don't deserve a life. I don't deserve those things. But God gave them to me anyway. So I promise you, I'm going to stay grateful. And I'm going to keep telling Him on a daily basis, "God, thank you. Thank you so much." See, I don't think we can thank Him too many times, by the way. So, gratefulness. Number 6. What I call guarding. 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 I pray every day, "Lord, help me today by guarding my life so that I don't do anything sinful today." Amen. Now, when you personally pray that prayer to God in the morning, it helps you stay reminded of that all that day. I get up the next day and I pray the same thing again. "God, guard my life today as only you can." And I'm just talking about His protection. I think He does protect us. I'm talking about guard me and keep me out of some situations where there would be temptations involved. Keep me out of some things and out of some places I don't need to be, or where I might get involved in those kind of things. So help guard my life today. And then the last one, number 7, is guidance. Guidance. "Lord, guide my steps today, every step I make, every place I go, every person I meet. You guide my steps today so I don't do anything stupid." It's just one thing to do something sinful. There are some things that are not necessarily sinful, but they're just stupid. Can I just tell you, there's a lot of stupid people in the world.
Amen.
And a lot of them go to church. Some of them pastor. Nobody here, everybody here is excluded. I'm talking about doing dumb things that are going to have an effect on your life and other people's life. I said, again, it may not necessarily be sinful, but there are some things that are just not wise or not prudent for us to do. And we need to stay away from those kinds of things. God help me today, give me wisdom today. Guide every step so I make good decisions today. Good decisions for my benefit, my family, those I minister to, and good for the kingdom of God. Good decisions for the church and for my department. And guide me. Every step of the way. I don't want to take one step without His guidance. I don't want to say one word without His guidance. I don't want to go one place without His guidance. So every day, these 7 things I pray. Some of them I pray every morning, in the morning early before I start the day, before I get out of bed. Some of them I pray throughout the day to the end, and sometime even the evening when I lay my head on the pillow to go to sleep that night. Sometimes I finish them there. But I pray all 7 of these things every day. For nearly 15 years I've been doing that. And I'm telling you, it has helped me so many times to stay out of places I didn't need to be. To resist temptations that the devil put in my path. And it helped me to get closer to Him. It's helped me to help others and be more effective at that. And have more influence to do that. And I'm telling you, I believe it will help you too. If you'll start that. Maybe you already do something similar to that. You don't have to do what I've done. You may come up with your own list. But just make sure you cover everything so that no bases left uncovered, no stone unturned. But you pray to God today. Today is the only thing we have control over right now. So make the best of it. Keep out with me for prayer. Lord, I love you. Lord, I thank you so much for your love and your mercy to us. God, you know my heart. You know my life better than anybody here knows me, including myself. You know how much I need you and how these things have helped me so many times. Kept me out of trouble. Kept me out of things that I could have gotten caught up in. It might not have been necessarily simple, but just wouldn't have been prudent for me to be involved in. Lord, thank you for hearing our prayers. Thank you for the armor, all the armor you give us for the spiritual warfare. And God, I'm so thankful for that armor. But God, most of all, for the prayer that holds the armor together. It is our resource. It is our strength. It is our power in that spiritual battle we all face every single day we live here. So God, today, keep teaching us how to pray and help us today to be all we can be for you. In Jesus' name, amen.